So recently I was able to buy a guitar that has been one that I've been wanting to pick up since I was a teenager. If you've watched my channel, especially if you've watched the kind of artist presets that I do, you probably get a sense of the kind of guitarists that I like. Eric Johnson, Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Neil Schon, Mike Stern, all the artists that I've done presets for. But one guitarist I haven't talked about very much was probably my main influence as I was starting out. And it really was the guy who got me into not just rock guitar, but into blues and jazz and classical and all the different kinds in between. That's a guy named Rick Emmett, who was the lead guitarist and co-lead singer of a band called Triumph. So if you're not familiar with Triumph, they were a band out of Toronto, kind of hit their popularity around kind of late 70s into the early 80s, and then maybe around mid 80s they started to decline a little bit, and eventually Rick Emmett left the band in 88. And he went on to have a very kind of robust solo career with kind of rock albums and jazz albums and classical guitar and blues albums, all kinds of stuff. Super versatile guitarist, great songwriter. And if you're not familiar with him, I would encourage you to kind of check him out on YouTube. There's tons of videos around. If you've not seen Triumph, I'll put a link in the description to maybe one of their performances when they were at the US Festival in '83. That was the big festival in California. They had like 500,000 people, and they played on the same day as like Van Halen and Judas Priest and the Scorpions and all those guys. And so from a gear standpoint, from a guitar standpoint, for many years, Rick Emmett's main guitar was a famous Ackerman semi-hollow, beautiful guitar. I'll put a picture of it here. And he also used some Dean kind of flying Vs, and he had double necks. All the guitars back in the late 70s and that would play double necks. But then in the mid 80s, he signed an endorsement agreement with Yamaha and started playing Yamaha guitars. And he started out with a SG kind of style guitar, beautiful kind of white guitar that he used, I think, on the Thunder 7 tour. He was very complimentary of how it played, how it sounded, but he also said it was super heavy and very uncomfortable on stage. And for the next tour, Sport of Kings, he moved on to a model called the RGX. And this is kind of at the same time that I was, as a teenager, was really getting to playing guitar. And so seeing him playing that guitar, it really just kind of stuck in my mind as a guitar that I really loved. And, I remember seeing the ads in the guitar magazines of him with the RGX, and I always kind of wanted to get one. In fact, the first guitar I ever bought for myself was an RGX. It was an RGX 312, so kind of the very low level of that model. I'll put a picture up here. You can see it. And I liked that guitar well enough, but then I moved on to other stuff. I was getting into Vai and Paul Gilbert and Satriani, and so I bought an Ibanez RG, and from there it just went on and on and on. But I've always been keeping my eye out for wanting to get kind of a top-of-the-line RGX, because to me, even as I go through the years, when I see those kinds of guitars, I always kind of wanted one. And I always compare when I see a Jackson or something like that, or even a Suhr, they all look great, but to me, there's just something perfect about the proportions and the shape of the Yamaha RGX from the late 80s. And maybe it was just because of the Rick Emmett thing, or maybe it's just an opinion of mine, I don't know. But I always wanted one, and recently I was able to find one. And so this is the guitar I picked up. This is a Yamaha RGX 1212A. So the A meaning has active pickups. So I looked up the serial number. This guitar was built in July of 1988. And I'll do some close-up images of the guitar. You can see this guitar is in incredible shape for being over 35 years old. I think somebody loved this guitar. Somebody took care of this guitar. And it's in great shape. And it's still stock. And I'm just so happy I was able to pick it up. So let's talk about this guitar's specs a little bit. You've got an alder body with a mix of maple mahogany on the neck. And as you can see, it's a neck-through body design. So a very smooth heel here. And to me, the most interesting thing that I found out about this that I did not know, like I said, I owned an RGX when I was a kid, and I was stupid and I didn't know about guitar specs and things like that. The RGX is a Gibson scale length. So it's 24 3/4 inches. So I always assumed it was a Fender scale length, 25.5, but it's not. And it actually explains something to me now. I remember when I moved from the RGX to the Ibanez RG, the RG just felt bigger. And I always thought it was because the Ibanez neck was thicker. And, you had those wizard necks, and they were kind of a little bit thicker and super flat. But now I'm realizing it was because I moved from a 24 3/4 scale length to 25.5. So, you learn something new every day, I guess. I just never kind of went back and looked at the specs of the RGX until now. You've got an ebony fretboard. It's bound. You've got jumbo frets. You've got a Yamaha branded kind of Floyd Rose type. In fact, I think it was licensed from Floyd Rose, the design. And you've got Yamaha branded active pickups. So there is a cavity here where you put the battery. And then you've got the controls. So let's talk about the controls of this because they're a little bit weird. So we'll start off here. You've got volume, you've got a tone, you've got one switch here that allows you to split the bridge humbucker into a single coil. We'll talk about this dial in a second. And then down here, you've got a little toggle switch for each pickup. So I'm sure Yamaha thought they were being kind of super flexible and allowing you to control each pickup on or off. But frankly, this is pretty stupid, and I'm not surprised. I don't think they did this for very long. So for example, if I wanted to switch from the neck pickup, which I have selected right now, to the bridge, I'd have to switch one off and switch one on. And so I've found as I've gotten to know this, it's like, well, you should turn on the one you want to go to first before you switch off the one you don't want to be on, because if you switch them all off, you get no sound whatsoever. So it's a little weird. I don't really care for it. I'm thinking what I may do is this initial switch, what I might do is set it up so it switches between the neck and the humbucker, and then I'll still have this switch to turn on or off the middle pickup if I want it. And then between those two switches, I'll have access to the, if you think of a five-way switch, I'll have access to the 1, 2, 4, and 5 sounds. And then this switch would do nothing, because this idea of, I want to switch from, say I'm on neck and middle, and now I want to switch the bridge, I got to do that, and then push that one down. It's kind of goofy. So, you know, they tried something new. It didn't really work, but it's kind of interesting. So the last thing we have on this knob is you've got a built-in mid boost. And so basically it works just like a volume. You can kind of control the amount of boost you want to get. I will say, this being a 35-year-old guitar, both the tone and this mid control, the pots aren't super smooth and linear. They're like really loose, and then they get tight, and you can control like this and you're not getting much at all, and then all of a sudden it just jumps in. But it's an interesting control, and it gives you a lot of versatility in how you can get the tones out of this guitar. So let's go ahead and plug this thing in and hear how it sounds. So the other thing I should mention is the jack for the guitar is right here. And let's hear how it sounds. So right now I've got the neck pickup on. For this demo, I'm using my Neural DSP Quad Cortex. I've got a preset that's a mix. I've got a Mesa Boogie Lone Star model for some clean and kind of lower gain stuff. And then I've got a Soldano 100 that I'm using for kind of crunch and lead tones. So let's go ahead and start on a clean tone. And right now I've got the neck pickup on, and I've got the volume and tone all the way up. Let's hear how it sounds. So a nice single coil tone. When I compare it to my Fender American Vintage 2, the 61, I think these have a little more mid to them, so there's a little more warmth to them. But overall, it's still very single coily. If I add in the middle, so I will say the quack, so to speak, that you get from the two pickups together in this is pretty subtle. It's not very... It's there, but it's not super present like it is on a real Strat. If I go to just the middle, add in the bridge. So when you add the middle and the bridge together, you get more of a quack than you do on the neck. And then just the bridge. So you can hear that bridge is pushing the clean tone into a little bit of drive. If we switch it into single coil mode, you know, it thins out quite a bit, gets very trebly. You add the middle to that. And if you want, you can add in the neck too. And if we just go back to humbucker, so it sounds good with all three together. I don't know if it's a tone you'd use a lot, but it's good to have the option. So let's go ahead and go back to the neck. And let's add in the mid boost. So again, here I'm turning it. It doesn't really start to come in until about there because the pot's a little loose. But if I turn all the way up, if I add in the middle, if we go to, so now I'm on the bridge in single coil mode and I've got the mid boost all the way up. Let's go back to humbucker. You can hear it's really pushing. So if we, let's turn the mid boost all the way back down. Let's go to kind of a lower gain and we'll go back to the neck. So kind of a nice stratty kind of sound. If we add in the mid boost, so there's a lot of flexibility there. We add in the mid boost, it almost kind of takes a single coil into maybe like P90-ish kind of range. If we go to the bridge, so you can hear, you add in a little bit of gain, it starts to smooth out that bridge a little bit. So I think overall, I'm pretty happy with just kind of the versatility of the tones you can get from this. With the switches, sometimes it's hard to get to, but once you learn your way around, it's a little bit easier. Let's go ahead and go to kind of a gainier rhythm tone. obviously the Soldano has its own kind of tone to it. That's why you're getting a good amount of clarity from this. If instead I switch to like a Friedman, you get more of a Marshall-y kind of thing. So this can work well with that, but I like the Soldano. Even if we switch over to the neck, kind of a nice kind of throaty neck on a Strat kind of thing. If we go ahead and go back to the bridge and add in that mid boost, and overall, the tuning stability on the vibrato is pretty good. I will say sometimes I find I need to like give it a little tug up to reset it. So sometimes if I really bend, kind of got to reset it. So I got some maintenance I got to do to figure out what's going on there, but overall it does pretty good. We turn the mid back down and I go to more of a lead tone. So I'm just going to stack some gain into that Soldano and hear how it sounds. So kind of a nice clean tone, nice pick attack. So, and then if we go to the neck, we can add in the mid. So like I said, a good amount of versatility on this. You can get a lot of different tones out of it, which I like. So overall, you know, I was excited to find this guitar, especially I got it for a decent price. It even came with the original case and all of the, you know, original accessories and, you know, instruction manual and everything. So I was surprised because sometimes when you buy these things used, it's like it's even missing the arm and all that kind of stuff. So I was excited to kind of get my hands on it. I like how it plays. It still plays really well. It sounds good. You know, the controls, they're a little goofy, but I'll put up with it. Overall, I'm super happy to get a guitar that's kind of always one that I've wanted to own, you know, and it's just in really good condition, just like little things. Like on these RGXs, very often, you know, the pointy end of the headstock will be all beat up. This one is perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. So, you know, are there a few swirlies on the finish and things like that? You can even see a little bit of, you know, finish lines, like it's almost checking a little bit. Yeah, but again, this guitar is 37 years old almost. So overall, I don't know that I can really complain about the condition it's in. like I said, somebody really loved this guitar, and I'm looking forward to holding on to it for quite a while. Again, maybe it's just going back to that whole teenage brain got linked into it when I saw Rick Emmett playing it, but I just love how it looks. You know, I love the proportions of it. I love kind of the cutaways here that allow access. I like the headstock with kind of the, you know, the two-tier here, but I'm super happy with it. And like I said, for me, it was just kind of a dream to own, you know, one of these top-tier RGXs from that period, and I'm super happy with it. Anyway, if you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. I know this isn't a guitar that kind of is common or is for sale or a lot of people even care about. So if you appreciated me rambling about kind of something that was just important to me, I appreciate it. And as always, thanks for watching.